And we're back with some more Factorio because I have this game stuck in my brain right now, and I really desperately need to finish off this design. Just get it out of my brain. It's stuck in my head. It needs to go. We've got oil done, steel, iron, copper, all of liquids, blue circuits, green, red, all of the basic sciences. All we have left to do is rocket science. Okay, and the science labs. And okay, there'll be a few other bits and bobs, but this is the main thing. We just got to finish off the rocket science and do the science labs. So we want to put together a little facility here that can do 750 rocket science per minute and all of the science lab that goes with them, assuming we've got the space. So just, give me a couple of minutes. A quick look at our calculator, and we have a little bit of a problem. It's going to take 1.125 rocket silos to make all of our rocket parts. That's too many. We can, though, I think, crank up the amount of speed beacons around it. Okay. Right, so we're going to need 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 speed beacons? I think this can be arranged. Would you look at that? 11 speed beacons. Easy peasy. In fact, we could go a few more. We might even go a few more to buy us some leeway. This should actually not be too bad. And now we just got to put in the resources for feeding it, which should be fairly straightforward. After a lot of playing about, this is the result. Now, the bottom half is probably the easiest to understand. This is where all the science goes. All the science comes down here to get scienced into the science buildings where it gets, electrified. You can just hear it there. There's a disco going on and they're consuming all those science potions. They're actually not science potions. They're just, it's for getting people drunk. They're drunk people come up with drunk ideas. That's why all the technology in this is so crazy. Anyway, with all the science down there, what's up here is all the production to get this rocket going. Now, this rocket's actually not that bad. It just wants rocket control modules, low density structures, and rocket fuel. Now, rocket fuel we're making elsewhere and shipping in, not a bothers, but low density structures and rocket control modules we gotta make. And, for the rocket control modules, you're gonna need speed modules, so we just stuck in a bunch of them here. We even speed module the speed module production to make it even faster, because, that's just normal. And then you have the rocket control modules out here. These things are actually very slow to craft, so it takes a long time, meaning we just stick down one requester chest, get it to store up a bunch of resources, and then we just have it feed. One requester chest can feed 3, and one delivery chest can feed 3 as well. And done. Then comes low density structure. Ah, yes, the good old low density structure. We were bringing in plastic, steel, and copper plate, so that was actually super easy to do. We just chucked it all in there, and it's done. However, of course, this thing is not all rainbows and sunshine. There's still this rocket that needs to be produced, or the satellite. This was a little bit awkward. What it requires is an awful lot of accumulators, a bunch of radars, and a bunch of solar panels, and rocket fuel, and low-density structures, and blue processors. Well, the processors units, the rocket fuel, and the low-density structures we're making. That's fine. But it was the solar panels. We needed 2 of those, 2 of the accumulators, and finally, of course, the radar. The radar, though, was super easy. We stuck them all in, fed them all into this little system, and then, well, we have this Frankenstein's monster. This takes the satellite and sticks it in this buffer chest, and this chest just sits there and waits until there's not 1,000 science. If there's not 1,000 science in here, it just loads up the rocket, and we just keep launching them as needed. Of course, this thing immediately ran into problems that wouldn't work right. For now, though, let's just show you why it is actually working. See, 750 science per minute, and there's the 541 rocket control units that we need to get this working right. So this thing works grand. In fact, if we speed this up, it should dip a little bit above 550. Yeah, there we go. We've actually gone up a bit above it. The reason it's hard to get it to stabilize perfectly is, well, you launch a rocket and then you get a whole bunch of science. So it comes in bursts. So there's a burst of science every time the rocket launches, and then there's nothing for a while. So you've got to really run it for a period of time before you know what's happening, which made it really hard to troubleshoot. Let's try the troubleshooting section here. You know what? This here is the rocket building as normal. And if you'll notice here, we're starting to stall out on rocket control units. And I was wondering why this was happening. We had it, perfectly engineered and low density structure. I was stalling out on both of those. Turns out it was to do with how much you can request. You can only request a maximum of 120 rocket control units and 120 of the low density structure. And you can't double request them. So what was happening is, when the rocket was launching, it would request 120 low density structure. And I think we are done. Yeah, there we go. So this thing's fully loaded with 122. This one, I'll just pause this for a second. This one is loaded up at 120 rockets per minute. Oh my god, that's so loud. But what was happening then was these were backing up in the system. So these things would actually fill up their chests and then stop producing. So these things were shutting off or not getting maximum throughput all the time, because during the rocket launch, And like when the rocket's launching, it can't build anything else. The whole system would back up with rocket modules, and then we would get production stops, which would cause blips in production, which slowed the whole thing down to about 700 signs per minute instead of 750. Yep, this is the stuff you get to enjoy when you start building at this sort of scales. It's why you build everything you test everything first in some sort of debug map, just so you can figure out these stupid bugs, because once you start dealing with them in the real game, it gets really annoying. My first attempt to fix it was I would get these and expand the storage on them up to 3 slots, so that they'd have more time to buffer in between, like while the rocket was launching. This was not as successful as I was hoping. It helped, but not the whole way. Then I came up with a smarter plan. We just, we double buffered everything. Right, so what happens now is, when the rocket launches, these things still request 120 low density structure, and then they chuck it into this chest. We just force feed them in. That way, while the rocket's launching, and these things can't accept anymore because they've maxed out on their 120, the chests behind them can keep requesting 120 and keep topping them up. No need for anything else. This was all I needed to do, completely solve the problem. We'll just skip through this again. You know what, we can just fast forward it to 64%. Oh. And then we'll just slow it back down again. Done. Oh my god, that was so quick. Sorry, there you go. I just waited until the rocket sound effects went away. They were so loud. But yes, you'll notice this requester chest here is well over its 120 max. That's because this chest behind it just keeps force feeding. So by force feeding the rocket modules and the low density structures, we were able to bypass the issue and just keep it running at full speed all the time. And this meant all of our rocket production modules and our low density structure was all producing at max, and everything worked out nice and fine. And that is our science build done. Whole thing sorted, and we're even consuming the science in real time. I've had mining productivity going along, and we can go in here, we can go under the last hour, and we can go under consumption. And you can see we are consuming 753 science per minute. Done. This thing works perfectly. Alright. That means we have every single section of this done all the way along. All we've got to do is get the trains running through and loading them up and unloading them. Which, not going to be super simple, but... Oh, no, we still need to do one more thing. We need to put in a mall or nexus. What do you call it? I don't know. People have different names for these things. It's where you build all your stuff. And we're going to be able to do some special ones. Really special ones. Because you know what? We've got access to the whole bus. You see, looking at this, you think of it as an old-school transport bus. What you've got here is just, 2 trains that run along it, or, well, trains that run through here. They get all the way to the end, and that sort of feels like you're almost your normal main bus. Normally, your main bus would look something like this, and you have all your resources going on it, your iron, your copper, your red circuits, your green circuits, and all that. But the difference with what we have made and what this is this gets to the end and then stops. What we have is a little bit different, because when our stuff gets to the end, it goes all the way back around to the start. We don't have a main bus. What we have is a loop-de-loop, or, oh god, loop-de-loop sounds terrible. Whatever, everything when it gets to the end comes right back round again. Now, if you were first designing this and you were using it, your initial idea would be, you know what, we'll get the furnaces and we'll put them at the start of our bus. Like, this is where we load everything on, and we'll put the furnaces, that's the first thing we want to do because we want to smelt. Then we'll put our, turn it into our intermediate things like green circuits, red circuits, whatever. Then we'll put our rocketry program in, say, over here. And then finally, at the very end, we'll have our science. However, that's not necessary. For example, what we could do if we really wanted to is we could have everything loaded up here, but then we could have our furnaces right here at the very end of the bus. It doesn't actually make a difference. The reason being, these trains carry everything, so if it'll get all the way to the end, it will pick up the iron plate, and then it will carry that iron plate all the way around the loop anyway. It doesn't matter where you put it on. All that matters is where you consume it. So theoretically, you could put all of your production here, and you could put your intermediates before it even if you want. It won't make a difference. It just means the first train will go around and won't actually carry anything. But once they start looping, you can pick up its iron plate here, bring it all the way around, and then turn that iron plate into whatever you need, or green circuits all the way there. And then, once it carries along its third route, it'll pop it off. And every time it comes back around, it's going to keep topping up. So once it does its first loop, or its second loop, somewhere around there, it will be full of all the resources it needs anyway, and it doesn't matter. All that matters is where your consumers are. So what we can do, we can put our liquid solidification, just very first thing. Then I think next up we'll put in a mall, or a nexus, siphon, whatever you want. This would be where all your, productivity modules are made, all the stuff you need for making more factory. We can put that right there, right at the front, so that it gets priority. Then after that, we'd probably put in just, regular production, then, rocketry, then science maybe. then furnaces at the very end. Now, the reason we put in our furnaces at the end is that means all the furnaces get done, all the liquids get done, and then our mall has first pick. This is going to be very, very useful for us. You know what? Let's do up the mall and I'll show you why it's so useful. One of the worst things about building a base is expanding it. Well, that's not the worst thing. It's speed and productivity modules. To build speed and productivity modules is really, really expensive. And what happens is you end up building whole factories just to build the speed and productivity modules you're going to need to build your big factory. It'd be really nice if your factory could build those or flim-flam back and forth. So what we're going to end up having here is all of our resources are going to pass through our little mall, nexus, siphon, whatever you want to call it. And then this mall is going to get first pick. It's going to be allowed to pull out as much resources as it wants. This allows us to do some silly things. For example, we can take all our red, green and blue circuits and dump them straight into productivity modules. This will of course starve all of our science production and our science production won't work. But if you want speed and productivity modules, you can convert your entire factory and all of its throughput to speed and productivity modules and nothing else. Which is great, right? That's wonderful for your expansion, but not only can you do that, we can also divert all of our petroleum production into making masses of batteries so that we can make accumulators, solar panels, and all of the necessary things to put together. Oh, where is it? Logistics robots, construction robots, all that stuff. We can mass produce them just at ridiculous rates. For example here, let's just open up the productivity module here and we'll put on the last 10 minutes. In the last 10 minutes, we have produced 839 solar panels per minute and 608 accumulators per minute. Now, I did a little bit of math here, and based on perfect ratios and all this stuff, you need about 21 accumulators for every 25 solar panels. Doing out the math and all that stuff, we're going to end up with about 609 accumulators per minute. We'll use 725 solar panels per minute, and that will give us about 30 megawatts of power per minute, as in the amount of solar panels and accumulators that we'll be able to produce and deploy will be equal to 30 megawatts per minute, or 1,827 megawatts per minute, per hour. Now, I don't know, we'll have to figure out how much power it takes to run this entire thing when we're finished, but the theory would be we should be able to mass produce enough solar and accumulators to then power another module. You have to remember here, this thing is, well, while it is quite a long module, we're going to be chucking 4 of them on here and then another 4 on the other side. So once we have one of these built, it will start mass producing all of the solar and accumulators we need to build the next one. Well, that's the theory. Now let's see what happens when we put it over to producing nothing but modules. After running the productivity modules for about an hour to make sure it was nice and stable, we're hitting about 28 level 3 modules a minute. That's actually a decent amount. Now, it's not the best. If you look down here, this is our blueprint for the whole thing. I just blueprinted every single module we've built, or the whole string that it's going to be. And there's 3,400 productivity level 3 modules and 5,300 productivity or speed level 3 modules. I'm going to have to tweak this a little bit to make sure they're more evenly produced. But working it out, it'll take about 5 hours and 15 minutes for this thing to produce enough speed modules to replicate itself. And then say it takes another 3 hours or so, say 5, 6, 7, 8, say 8 hours in total to produce enough power and modules to run itself. That means every 8 hours we can duplicate this. But of course, the moment we duplicate this and we actually have 2 modules side by side, it'll only take us 4 hours to produce the next module. And it'll take us under 3 hours to produce the next module. So once we start building this, it should rapidly spin out of control in how quickly we can expand. It's sort of just one of the inadvertent joys of this. You have to remember, the only reason we're building this way is because we decided to go with a single exit rail, which resulted in these giant trains, which resulted in these smaller trains to feed off of it, which resulted in us having the opportunity to build our little siphon this way. Of course, we still have to do some maintenance and cleaning up, and we also have to set up the trains for loading and unloading. There's plenty left to do, but I do like the possibilities of what we can do with this stupidly oversized mall. Anyway, I am way out of time. It took me forever to design and build this, and there's still a few tweaks I would like to make to it. Oh, I should probably go through this a little bit here. We've got 2 sulfur plants feeding 1 sulfuric acid plant, which feeds, I think it's 11 or 12 battery plants, just to produce all of the batteries that go into making all of these accumulators. And then we have 3 sets of that. So you have to remember there's 3 flat-out sulfuric acid plants feeding... How many batteries is this again? You know what? Let's grab this tool and see. We've got... yes, 13 battery plants. Sorry, I had that wrong. Well, that's nice. To go with the productivity modules, we have just a whole bunch of speed and productivity modules that are all speed beaconed and modules. Oh, and one thing, we're going to be building our nuclear weapons here as well in this facility, but it's going to be awkward. We're going to have to ship in rocket control units because rocket control units are required. So I think we'll ship those in from the space section. As in our section over here, we're going to have to produce rocket control modules and then put some of them back onto the train just for nukes production. This thing will sort of only be active when we need it. So once we stop producing productivity modules, speed modules, solar, whatever we're using, all of the production will immediately go back to producing science. So this is more just whenever we need something, we can quickly and efficiently produce it, and then when we don't need it anymore, we're good. For example, if we just need to put down laser turrets, we can produce hundreds of laser turrets per minute. Well, maybe not per minute, but a lot of laser turrets, more than we could ever possibly need. But yes, I am going to finish this up. I think in the next episode we are going to be sorting out the trains, the loading, the unloading, and basically making sure that this whole thing will run and only have our magic chests down here to feed it all. And then once we figure out how to load, unload, and make sure that we can fit everything along, then it'll be time to actually implement it in our actual save. That's going to be interesting. We're going to need to clear a lot of territory. Anyway, I'm going to cut this out here. I hope you enjoyed, and good luck.